Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Integrated Athlete Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Mathew Ah Chow, and Mathew is a very well-rounded individual. He's got a background in the martial arts. He's competed at a very high level, both nationally and internationally. He's also got a background as a physio, strength and conditioning coach. He's a father. He's also a business owner where he runs his own business in a multidisciplinary health clinic in Western Sydney. So Mathew, welcome, mate.
Lovely. Thanks, Dan. And thanks for color coordinating with me today.
Yeah,
I got the memo. So nice,
you got the
nice
memo.
shirt.
Thanks, mate. You too. Awesome. So if you could just give everyone, Matt, a bit of a background. I know a lot of people listening to this will probably know you, but there's probably a number of people that don't know you. So if you could just give everyone a bit of a background around, what was life like growing up for you? What were some formative forces on you? And essentially what got you into health and fitness?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I guess when I moved to Australia when I was about 8 years old. And so kind of transitioning through and then growing up, I think naturally, like many of us, some of us tend to be more inclined and enjoy more of the sporting side. And so I then grew up playing rugby league, kind of from around 13, 14, up to around 16. And then from school, started playing more rugby union as well. So kind of the interest and then grew from that in terms of fitness and kind of getting stronger and faster. So I had the early growth spurts, and so I was lucky to be one of the bigger guys growing up. And so I kind of naturally was physically stronger than everyone until like probably 13, 14, and then stopped growing. And everyone kept growing. I was like, what's going on? So what happened? And so all of a sudden, where I was used to being the bigger guy on the field, didn't kind of have that anymore. So I had to think and be a bit smarter and play a bit smarter and kind of get stronger and fitter, and probably had to rely more on those basic fundamentals to use that and skill over just being big. So yeah, that was kind of the early sporting, but yeah, lots of good memories of kind of playing just hard games and tough tackles, and yeah, that was kind of growing up, and a lot of it, what I remember was just sport.
Yeah, nice. So always that kind of background as a bit of a natural athlete then, and just having a natural sort of inclination for it, eh?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's kind of just naturally drawn to it, and always been very active and outdoors and always moving. So the kind of natural gravity towards that, and I think the physicality of it as well was always something that drew me to it.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. And can you talk a little bit about kind of what got you then into the martial arts down the track? What was it that sort of, made you want to choose martial arts? And then maybe if you can talk about a few of your career highlights.
Yeah, for sure, Dan. I think again part of that physicality, and I think growing up as part of an outlet for me. So the physical part was always something that helped, and then almost became like an addiction. So the rush of sport, and I think maybe a bit of that adrenaline kick as well. And so I think naturally, as again, like I said, problem was is I started playing in the forwards and was just getting hammered, right? Like all these big guys just like constantly getting hammered, constantly getting injured. And so from around 16, 17, we started doing Taekwondo through school, and then found a small little dojo nearby, and that kind of helped, again, giving me different type of perspective of movement, and then different ways of using my body as opposed to just brute force. So Taekwondo was the initial start, and we kind of used to play around and train, and a few of the guys from school as well. And again, it was a whole new thing of learning how to move in a different space, in a different movement context. And the challenge of that was really exciting. As I started then to kind of wean off of sport, I kind of realized through around 18, 19 and started uni, I realized that I was missing missing sport and missing the physicality of it, and missed that kind of buzz that I got from it. So I then looked back at getting back into some sort of martial arts. Um, and it was, again, I think probably something that was probably meant to be. I got recommended by a member at the gym that I was working with, and they're like, oh, if you're after something that's a bit more intense, um, go down to this dojo in West Ryde, and it's called Kyokushin Karate, and it's pretty intense, but go have a look and see. Um, and I remember like it was yesterday. And Dan, you've been to West Ryde Dojo, the old West Ryde Dojo. So you used to walk up these stairs, and the first thing that hits you is the smell.
The scent.
And it's a unique smell of a lot of sweat and probably a bit of blood and tears as well. And kind of as you get up, it gets more and more intense as you walk through these small stairs. And I remember my first class, and so I'd done Taekwondo, and we used to wearing big thick padding. We used to wearing head guards and gloves and shin pads, and they're like, okay, we're gonna get ready. So Sensei Wes, we're gonna get ready for sparring. And I'm so nervous, and I'm looking around, and I'm looking for where's all the protective gear. And I'm like, oh, maybe they'll just come out and pull it out, right? And I'm still waiting. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like everyone's just got their mouth guards, and I'm like, okay, this is scary. And like you're in such a small space, and it's so intense. And I remember being like, well, there's nothing to do, right? Let's just get on and do it. And that was the hook into Kyokushin karate with Shin Kyokushin.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think it's for many of us, it's that initial, as you sort of described, it's that initial bit of fear when you first get exposed to it, because it is quite a high impact, quite a tough style of martial art, and yeah, just really persevering through that, I think, is then you can start to enjoy it down the track.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the start, and that was the hook, and it really gave me back again that physical outlet. It was challenging. It was mentally tough, but yeah, super rewarding. So that was the start. And then from there, I guess it was a long journey into competitiveness as well. So I think early on, one of my other memories was from Sensei Frank, the other teacher, coach at the time, and I remember him saying to me that, Mathew, in a few years you're going to be competing, and I think you've got what it takes to compete internationally. And I was like, again, just one of those moments where you're like, nah, like, don't be silly. And then I think, when you asked about highlights, one of the biggest highlights was in 2011. So I would have probably started karate around, I'm not sure now, probably around 2006, 2007, 2008. And so it would have been about 3 years in, and I would have been a green belt. Was my first world tournament. So that would have been 2011. And I remember going into Japan and going into Tokyo and be surrounded by all of the top level international fighters that kind of grow up watching on YouTube, and being like, again, like, how did I get myself into this situation? But you just kind of got to back yourself and go. And so there's definitely something wrong in my psyche where the challenge overcomes the fear. And now I'm just like, this is stupid, right? This Danish fighter I was a green belt versus the black belt. From this Danish fighter was, no joke, probably 20 centimeters taller than me and probably about 35 kilos heavier than me. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah, I remember seeing that footage. This dude was just a giant, wasn't he? And
this is the giant.
oh,
And I was like, yeah, I can take it to him. I can take it to him. And again, part of the brain that's like, accept any challenge. And yeah, it was such a buzz and such a highlight that even just getting kicked in by someone that big and at that level was just such a shock. But the buzz from the whole atmosphere and the competition, and I guess surviving that just kind of fed into more desire and more wanting more of that. So that was quite a special memory for me. Yeah.
yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful. Awesome, Matt. Any other sort of career highlights that you'd like to share?
I guess the my ending career tournament was a highlight. So the other one was in 2017 in Kazakhstan. So that was my last World Cup fight, and that's my weight division. And I was up against Japan's number one middleweight at that time, and probably overall in the weight categories, probably number three in the world. And I knew that I was up against a very, very tough fight. But I was also in a kind of end of my career stage where I was mentally probably in the best place, physically in the best place. And I'd been well prepared. I'd trained with, I trained 2 weeks in Japan. We did a training camp in Sydney. We had Roman Nesterenko for 2 weeks in Sydney. And so it was just feeling good. It was one of those things that just everything fell into place. And I remember towards the end of, I think it was the second round, being down on points and knew that I had to pull off a knockout to win. And to be able to pull off a kick that I'd practiced over and over and over and over and over again, millions and million times, was still to this day feels like a dream, because I'd seen myself do it in my head so many times, and I'd visualized that and practiced it so many times that it even today still doesn't feel real. So that was a very cool moment.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And I remember again watching that and watching occasionally the highlights come back up on Facebook or YouTube or something like that, and seeing that knockout kick is yeah, it's really quite profound. You know, you're up against, like you said, Japan's favorite fighter for that weight division, and someone that had been at the top for a very long time. So yeah, super special stuff. That's really cool, Matt. So
Yeah,
we'll
thanks,
move
man.
on to the next question. So what is it that you believe, from your point of view as a physio, as a strength and conditioning coach, and as an athlete yourself, what is it that you believe it really takes to become a top class athlete?
Ooh, it's a tough question, Dan. There's a lot, and I think from me that it's really about putting all the pieces together. And I think in that moment, like I said, in 2017, at the end of my career, all the pieces came together. The biggest piece I think that was missing is self-belief, and I think you have to be in a place where you 100% believe that you can overcome the challenge. And I think that's the biggest piece of the puzzle that everyone tends to struggle with to be at that top level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that I personally had to do a lot of work on myself, and I'm still working on too. But it is the case, like you said, for a lot of athletes, we can push hard in the gym, we can train hard, have really good fitness and good stamina and all this sort of stuff. But like you're saying, if the mind isn't 100% backing yourself, then yeah, I agree that is a super important
So
quality.
yeah, that's right. And I mean, it's you have to do all that training, you have to be confident, and you have to believe that you've done everything you can and you've done the best. So you've prepared the best, you've eaten the best, you've slept the best, you've recovered the best. And when you've done all that work and you've done all the preparation, that's what gives you that sense of confidence. But you then have to believe that you can then overcome that challenge. So that's the hardest thing and probably the biggest piece. And so it's putting all the pieces together. That's, again, a challenge in itself. But I'd say the missing piece that a lot of top level, the difference between that 1% and the rest is the belief.
Yeah, hearing that from a lot of top people, it is, like you said, it really is the differentiating factor, I think, because when you get to that top level in any sport or any combat sport, it's like everyone is already fit, everyone's strong. But it's the mindset and the self-belief that I think carries the top guys through, which is quite profound.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, particularly nowadays, I think, before strength conditioning was a little bit of a myth and a little bit of, a little bit of magic. But now everyone's so strong. Everyone's fast. Everyone's got access to the top level information. So you're going to come up to, everyone's going to be on a very similar level. Everyone's going to have done that work. It's just how well you can put it together with that self-belief.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome, mate. So where would you say that potentially we could look at this next question from 2 points of view? So where do you see athletes going right with their training from like a strength and conditioning and a rehab point of view? And then like, where do you think they could improve and where do you think, they could do a little bit better with their strength and conditioning and the rehab stuff?
I guess probably talking from my experience, the biggest thing is periodization. So knowing, and the hardest thing that I always struggle with is knowing when you want to peak. So you can't be at 100% at peak performance all the time. And I think it's hard depending on what you're doing and when your competition is. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things is making sure that you're peaking at the right time. Majority of my early years competing was just overtrained. So you're just constantly thinking like, oh, I haven't done enough, I haven't trained enough. And the time you get to the tournament, you're just exhausted. Your body's just, it's just craving to rest. So you're not at your optimal performance. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing, and that I still see today is not periodization and not doing the recovery. So again, like I said, everyone's doing the work, everyone's strong, everybody can work hard, but how can you train smarter is the tough one, and that takes a lot of science and planning and preparation and organization and testing. And it also takes a lot of knowing your body, knowing yourself, and listening to when it's physically tired, when you're mentally tired, when you have to push, and then when you just need to rest.
I think that's probably one of the toughest thing, as any sort of athlete could tell you, is trying to decide, am I legitimately tired or am I just sort of don't want to do it today? Because we all go through those days where, we don't really feel like doing it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it is super tough. And I mean, I guess majority of the time, if we listen to ourselves and we, it's like, oh, I'm too tired today, I'm just gonna chill out. So it's knowing when you need to, and that comes into the planning and knowing, okay, like today I'm gonna do, like today is like a super hard day. Today is gonna be a 10 out of 10 session. It's gonna be sprints. It's gonna be, for us, it used to be like, okay, we're gonna do a 5-minute round on the bag, and that's going to give us 20 seconds rest. And we're going to go another 2 minutes and 20 seconds rest and 2 minutes. And knowing that for that first 5 minutes, you're going to go super hard. You're not going to leave anything left in the tank, and then you're going to rest for 20 seconds, and you're going to go again as hard as you can for 2 minutes. Now, in those moments, there's moments where your brain's like, oh, okay, yeah, but I've still got another 3 rounds, and but I'm tired, but I didn't sleep well tonight. And that's those moments there where you've planned and that you have to perform. If you can get that right, because on the day when you have to compete, if you've slept 3 hours or 8 hours, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You need to be able to switch it on at that time and be able to perform. So having that kind of mentality and having the plan and organization around that is good, so that you know, okay, today's an easy day, and I'm just going to make sure that I get my movements right, some stretching, and do my mobility, and so that you're not trying to kill each other and not trying to kill yourself every single day. And again, that's what I think a lot of amateur sports, and that's a lot of, it's across everything that I see, but particularly around kind of my early days of training, it's just like 7 days a week, just killing yourself. I'm sure you've
Yeah,
been there
that's
as well,
it.
Dan.
You wonder why you're tired, like you said, you wonder why you're tired all the time and why, things start hurting a lot more than they otherwise should.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think one of the points you made there was quite profound as well, and something that I've sort of really taken on in my training a bit more is that, realizing that every day or every session that you've got planned for the week, like you're saying, it doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10. And if some of the sessions are a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, long term, you're probably going to get more longevity and better results from your program anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, and again, that's physically and mentally, right? Like it's not just the physical component, but mentally, like you can imagine if you're running a red line and you're trying to do 10 out of 10 sessions, mentally it's exhausting. And it's fine if you're, if you're recovering, but if you're still studying or working on top of that, and then you're trying to do back to back 10 out of 10 sessions, mentally, you're not going to be 100%. You're not going to be pushing 100%, because it's not just, it's not just the physical part, but it's making sure that you're switched on and you're performing and you're, mentally agile as well.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So maybe in the realm of like actual training in terms of doing stuff in the gym or doing stuff from a rehab point of view, could you give do you sort of have any general things that you see that people could improve upon?
Yeah, definitely. I think, from a physio perspective, obviously we assess everyone and look at everyone individually to see where they're lacking. But from a gym point of view and a training point of view, one of the big things is just having that mobility. And so mobility is really that ability for you to move your joints through the full range with control. So I think one of the things that we get confused about is just flexibility. So there's no point being able to do the splits and we'll be able to get your leg really high if you can't control that foot or that leg in that position. So having the flexibility and the stability and being able to put that together is one thing that quite often gets missed. And so we spend a lot of time being stronger in the smaller range of movement. And then if we spend a lot of time being flexible, it's probably going to lead us to more chance of injury because you're having more movement and less stability in that position. So, for example, for us, for karate, like if we're doing a lot of stretching to get the splits and we're only strengthening our, say, quads or glutes, and we're just doing kind of squats and lunges, but we're not working in that end range, it's going to be hard for us to have that stability and control through there as well from a gym perspective as well.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen a similar sort of thing, both in myself and then in a lot of other people as well, right? And as you're saying, a lot of people want to go chasing range, increasing the flexibility, but not actually being able to control that range. And, even like a common thing, like you said, trying to go for the splits, but spending zero time actually strengthening the groin as well. So I think we need both of those things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was quite lucky to spend 2 weeks training with a 2-time world champion in Japan, and to see the way that they train and the stability and the strength, not only just the flexibility, but Tsukamoto, his ability to get his leg really high is not just based on splits, but his control and his pinpoint accuracy is just incredible. And he's not that flexible.
Yeah, it's quite impressive to watch him move, isn't it? Someone like
it
him.
Is, yeah.
Like you're saying, I've heard stories of people watching him at camps and stuff, and he can't even touch his toes. But the control, I think, is the most impeccable part for him. He has And for people that aren't familiar with this guy, we can link something in the show notes. But he has this incredible ability just to control every part of his body. He's just spent so many years gaining mastery of this. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, he's the person that comes to mind when I think of that as a really good example of someone who's not super flexible, but the control and mobility he has in each one of those little joints that he has and the range that he has is just impeccable. And that's something that he works on before and after class and religiously, consistently. So it's not just like, oh, let's just do some mobility, we'll just do some stretching. It's something that is deeply ingrained in terms of his training. And I think I'm lucky and privileged enough to be able to experience that from a training point of view, but then also to see it implemented from a physiotherapy point of view and a strength conditioning point of view is pretty special.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what sort of comes to mind for me when you're telling me that story is, I think with so many of us, when it comes to either strengthening the body or gaining mobility or rehabbing an injury, and you probably see this all the time. You probably get sick of your clients telling you this, Matt, but yeah, you practice it for a few weeks and you go, oh, it's not really that much better yet. And it's like, well, no, you got to practice this stuff for months or years on end to actually gain full mastery of your body, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like unfortunately, most of what we do day to day is in such small, limited range that we're not actually testing or putting ourselves in those positions. So, to do it, for 5-10 minutes, a few times a week is great. But when you want to perform and you want to be at a top level, you have to put in the time and the work. And again, like we said, it needs to be part of, like, mentally. It's not just something that you're just doing. It's something that you focus towards and you're feeling, and you're putting it towards your body, so that you can use it in those moments when it's really important.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Awesome. So I was thinking we could move on and talk a little bit about maybe just perhaps the mental side of training and the self-talk side of training. And I know you've touched on the importance of this, but if you could give maybe some fundamental things or some fundamental ways that you believe people could improve on this aspect of their performance. And then maybe if you could talk a little bit about the importance of goal setting as well, both obviously on like a life point of view, but when it comes to sport and competition as well.
Yeah, it's like we could spend hours talking about it, Dan, but I guess I'll talk from my experience, and was one thing that I again had to self-learn about and to really delve and see what worked. And like I mentioned before, it wasn't really towards the end of my career, after 10 years or so, that the mental side and the self-belief and the visualization and the breathing control, all that really came together. And that was really probably only because it took years of training that and practicing. And so it's again, similar, like we think of mobility, and similar that we think of doing strength exercises and sprints and going to the gym, we have to kind of take from an athlete point of view, you need to think of the brain as a muscle. And unfortunately, a lot of athletes think that, if we just rock up on competition day, that we just expect our brain just to kind of switch on and fire and equivalent of lifting, 200 kilos when we've only really been in the gym lifting, 10, 12 kilos. And so if you're not training that brain and you're not training your ability to control your adrenaline, ability to control your breathing through meditation and breathing exercises, and being able to kind of focus when it's really important. It's very hard to be able to do that when you've got, you're in a big stadium or the pressure's on. It's those crucial moments where it's very loud, the pressure's there. Maybe you're injured, maybe your coach is yelling at you, maybe your part of your brain is telling you that you're tired, that you've got nothing left. That's really when those important moments of being mentally strong kicks in. And so that comes from a lot of work. Part of your training, if I used to always think about how many hours that I train during a week. how much of that's physical and how much of it's mental. And you always hear people saying that, like the mental game is so important, it's 60, 70% of what we need. But initially, I was training 99% with like 1% thought going into the mental part. Towards the end of the career, like the nice thing that I think put all those puzzles and all those pieces of the puzzle back together was being able to focus on the mental part. So that's, it is a combination of breathing control, meditation, and that's in a silent room where you're visualizing your competition, you're visualizing the kick in. For me specifically, you're visualizing being attacked, and your ability to control your heart rate, control your breathing. And like I said, I practiced the one spinning back kick that got the knockout for me so many times. And in my head, initially, I remember going through the training process, and the mental part of that is that it wasn't clear and it was messy and it wasn't smooth. And I remember the kick making me feel like I was really uncomfortable. I remember my heart rate increasing, I remember my breathing increasing. And towards the end, prior to the tournament, it was so easy to visualize it, such as a smooth kick and without any increase of heart rate, that the time that, like I said, the kick landed, I'd pictured it so many times that it had already happened. And so that's the power of visualization, and being able to see something happen with the control and the breathing. And so the visualization and the meditation and the breathing and being able to put all that together is a lot of work. And you have to be able to visualize that, and you've got to practice that. And it's a muscle, just like a muscle for your brain, that you've just got to practice a lot.
Yeah, that's really quite profound, and again, I think it is getting more well known in the world of sports and performance and that sort of stuff. But as you were describing, so you were saying initially on these early the early parts of your visualization, it actually physically felt uncomfortable in your visualization, and then as you'd practiced that skill, you kind of seen yourself in your mind's eye executing the perfect technique, executing that knockout technique. Yeah,
that's right. And it, for me, part of that process was being extremely specific with it. So you want to get to the point where you can not only see yourself from standing back, performing that technique or performing the movement, you want to see yourself in the body, and you want to see what that looks like. And so you want a real clear picture of that. Then on top of that, you want to know what it feels like. So you want to be able to feel for me, it was the sensation of the mat. It was the sensation of my gi on top. It was the sensation of where my hands were. And then it was, the smell as well. And the smell, what that, again, it doesn't have to be very, very specific of what exactly it's going to smell like, but in your head, you imagine all your senses completely alive. You can hear the voices and the screaming, the cheering. You can hear your coach in the background. And when all of that becomes that clear, like I said, still to this day, even when I watch back the highlight of that kick, it doesn't feel real because I practiced it and visualized it that many times. That when I watch it, it's like I'm watching it through my visualization already.
Yeah, that's really it's very powerful and very, really quite profound as well, right? Yeah, like I think you'd said this to me one time before, people talk about the idea of manifesting things in life. And I think it's exactly what you're saying just there in that example, right? Like you've felt it so many times before, you've visualized it, you felt it, you brought in all your senses that you've already experienced it, right? And then when it happens in real life, it's just the exact same as what you had experienced in your life, in your visualization practice. So.
It is. It's so real and so intense that sounds stupid, but like I almost feel like I got robbed at that moment because I'm like I'd already and one of my training partners, Jacob, was there, and I remember we were walking off the mat. And I was like, I had to stop and look up at the screen to rewatch the replay to check that it actually happened, because
you weren't just imagining it.
it's like yeah, again, like it's just that one of those crazy moments where you're just in the flow, everything's working properly, and yeah, it's like, when you say dream comes true, but when you actually then have to look and stop and see the replay, it's like, did that just actually happen? Yeah, it's a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, I think the more people can utilize this in all aspects of their life, the easier things become to achieve them, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's not, again, it's like it's not something special. It's not a magic trick. It's not, it's like when you see someone lift something really heavy. It's not a magic trick. It's just them doing the work. And they've just been at the gym lifting, and they're just now strong. And it's the same thing. And everyone has the ability to visualize. Everyone has the ability to control, and it just takes, a little bit of guidance and a lot of work. But it's exactly right. It makes everything else in your life a lot easier if you know what you want and you can see it and you can hear it and you can taste it and you can feel it. Your brain then can start to work, and particularly the subconscious brain, which is a whole nother level, another chat, but it's something that then can start working for you because it's so much more powerful than just that conscious brain.
Yeah, absolutely. You hear different statistics on this, but, people say the subconscious brain is, 90 to 95% of our actual processing power and things like that. So yeah, when we can learn to tap into that, it's really quite powerful.
It's very powerful.
Awesome, Matt. Yeah. So we'll try and be mindful of time here, mate. We'll try and wrap it up in the next 10 minutes for you. So we'll go through a few more questions. So for you as a practitioner and as a coach, what do you believe that your kind of unique view is, or your unique approach to problem solving is?
So like as a practitioner, as a coach, I think, like I said to you before, is really looking at someone as an individual and not just, not just their problem or not just their pain or not just what they want to do. But again, it's for me, like I explained before, it's how do all those pieces fit together? And for me, I go looking for the missing piece. And the fun part of that is when that missing piece puts together. And that might be as simple as them, like we said before, it might be missing mobility. It might be, a certain weakness. It might be a part of their training that they're neglecting. It might be the visualization. And when that falls in together and that puzzle comes together, it is part of the most rewarding kind of process.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So again, taking that big picture view on things, and again, I know it's a bit of a maybe some people don't like the word, but a holistic approach on performance.
Exactly.
As well.
It is. It's holistic. It's
awesome, mate. Anything you've changed your mind on over your career, Matt, and maybe some of the most important lessons, or one or two most important lessons that you feel that you've learnt?
Look, it's always changing, and I'm always learning, I'm always growing. But I think one of the biggest things is initially out of uni is that you feel like everything has to be kind of fit into a box. So all the studies, all the research kind of have to conceptualize and put everyone into a box. And then you start forcing people into boxes that probably don't fit. And like I said, when you start going holistic and you look at the person individually, you then realize that, you don't have to squeeze them in a box. You just gotta understand where they want to be and where they're at and what's the missing piece.
Awesome. Yeah, that is, it's really quite powerful. Like you said, when you begin looking at the whole person, and as all the research now shows, particularly around things like pain, it's everyone. It's everything about the person, right? Their physiology, their belief systems, their personality, and then on top of that, everything physical, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's freaking hard to do, right? It's hard to do well because it's complicated. And so it's nice to come out of uni with this concept of like, okay, well, we'll just fix the shoulder pain and we'll fix one tendon and the pain will go away. But the reality is that our bodies are a lot more complex, and there's a lot more, like I said, as the research shows now, it's a lot more complex. It's stress, it's sleep, it's eating, and all of those pieces of that puzzle have to fit together.
Yeah, absolutely. Powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff. So if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a bit of advice, what would you tell them?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would probably say, it's one of those hard ones that like I purposely don't regret anything because everything is meant to be or has happened for a reason. So, but I think definitely in terms of making sure that I relax more, I kind of tend to be pretty focused and pretty kind of driven, and I've always kind of been that way. So I'd be like, you know what, I need to have time out, chill out, go on more holidays, relax more, spend more time just having fun.
Yeah, totally. I think that's something a lot of us struggle with. But I'm sure having two young girls, they'll really teach you that, how to chill out.
That's right, exactly.
Awesome, man. Who would you say your top 3 most influential people in your life and why?
Yeah, talking about my girls, I think they're probably taken over now. So, the 2 girls and my partner, I think, that's the biggest influence, because everything now is done because of them, and everything revolves around kind of what's going to be the best for them. And so the influence that I am as a person, and the way that I act, and the way that I think and behave now is become so much more conscious, because they just become such sponges and absorb everything. So it's been definitely a big influence in my life. And so Amelia's almost 4, and so for the last 4 years has been really about how do I become my best self, so that I can kind of set the best example for her and Luna now. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome, mate. That's really cool. I imagine kids would be a quite profound mirror to you, as a parent. They pick up everything that you do, right?
Exactly. And it's scary because, like, it is like looking in a mirror, and when they do something or say something, and you're like, can't get angry at them because it looks like you're looking at yourself. It's something that you've said or something you've done, and so the other day she was jumping and climbing off the playground equipment that says no climbing. I'm like, how can you tell your 3-year-old that you shouldn't be doing that when when I've been on Ninja Warrior doing the exact same thing, hanging off monkey bars from 20 meters in the air. So
I love that. That's something I forgot in your intro as well. You've been on Ninja Warrior as well.
There you go. Right. Yeah, forgot about that as well. Add that to the list.
Oh, too many accomplishments, mate.
That's right.
Awesome. So we've got just a few more quick rapid fire questions that we'll go through. Who would you say a few of your favorite practitioners are in the industry? So whether that's from the physio or the strength and conditioning world.
Again, one of the ones that comes up when I'm teaching and kind of implementing new ideas is an old one. And there was one, Sam Gilbert. So really amazing physio, and also one of the top Australian fighters, introduced me to early on in my learning. There was anatomy trains, and a lot of it brings together our fascial connective tissue system. And a lot of that's about connecting our whole body together. So rather than just our knee or our foot, and it's really about how everything moves together in slings and how we generate that force and energy. So I would definitely say that. And I mean, the learning from Sam Gilbert as well has been pretty pretty amazing in that space as well. So he's definitely leading the way in strength and conditioning, and particularly adding that through a fighting lens as well. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think he's on top of everything at, like, all the latest research and implementation of that as well. So that's pretty
right.
cool.
So you have to get him on a podcast.
Yeah, we'll get him on. Get him on soon.
That's it.
Awesome. Any books or other podcasts that you'd like to recommend, mate?
There's a few, probably. I mean, I always like to go back to those top level athletes and really kind of pick into their psychology. So from karate point of view, can't go past GSP and understanding his ability to kind of that mental strength and how he overcame the mental challenges and losses, and how he bounced back. So that's definitely a recommendation. My recent kind of adventure into jiu-jitsu as well, and then listening to and reading book by Hickson Gracie, Breathe, as well, is another one that links in a lot more of that mental game into just the physical as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I have heard good reviews about that book as well, so that's really cool.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome, Matt. Where can people find you online, mate, if people want to get in contact with you or see you at the studio?
Yeah, sure, man. So we're in Parramatta, Western Sydney, activemovement.com.au. You can feel free to send me a message, or jump on Instagram, Active Movement Studio, send us a message, and we'll be in touch.
Beautiful, mate. And anything else you'd like to say or finish with?
No, just thanks, Dan, for the opportunity to chat. It's always nice to kind of reflect on those things and taking the time to just have a bit more of a chat and putting all those pieces together. It's cool.
Awesome, mate. So thank you very much for your time today, Matt. And
no worries, Dan.
Yeah, look forward. Maybe we'll have to do a round 2 sometime, hey?
That's right. We'll color coordinate a round 2 next time as well.